Hey, this is Jason with 4W Knives. I've got a project. I'm going to take this railroad spike and turn it into a knife. Generally speaking, railroad spikes do not make great knives. They have a low carbon content, which means they don't hold an edge very good. So I'm going to split this, put a good high carbon core in it, and then turn it into a knife. So it'll be basically a San Mai railroad spike knife. The way I'm going to do this to start with is I've got my calipers, which are cheapy set from Harbor Freight, and I'm going to mark the center of this all the way, and then I'll go both sides. Hopefully I get it dark enough that I can see it. Okay, I've got a line that I can see, and then I'll do the same. Oops, I kind of slipped on this one. Then I'll come back with a marker and put me a good visible line. Back, I want to make sure I got enough room for a handle. So I'm going to say right in there. Okay, now I'll take it to the cutoff wheel, split it, put some high carbon steel in it, tack it, and then I will forge weld it together. So when using the cutoff wheel, I make sure that I stay even, keep my wheel square to it. I want to make sure my cut from spine to belly is even. That way the core stays as centered as possible. If I don't, it's just going to cause problems later on. After I get the steel hammered into it, and that was not as easy as I thought it was going to be, but I do get it wedged in there eventually. I cut off all the excess steel so I have an even, uniform piece, nothing hanging off of it. Once I do that, I do a little bit of flux, spray some WD-40 on it, put some borax on it, and then I stick it in the forge. Get it up to forge welding temperatures, which is over 2,000 degrees, and then I do a press with the log splitter press. The next heat, I make sure that I get it really hot, and I come with a little more aggressive angle on this next one, just to really make sure that I've got a good forge weld. Once the forge weld is set, then it's just a matter of me trying to widen the piece, get a little bit longer so I can make some type of knife-shaped object out of this. This is probably the part where I'm definitely lacking. I'm pretty good with the machinery that I've got, but when I really put a hammer in my hand, that's whenever I start to lack, I think. I understand the concepts. I understand how to move the steel one way or the other, but putting it into reality is sometimes a challenge. I use the straight peen to try to get the area from the handle to the blade a little more symmetrical. And then I use the cross peen and I try to widen the piece. After I widen it out a little bit, I flatten it with the bigger hammer. I do run it through the roller mill, which I showed off camera, just to get a little bit more even pieces. And then I take the smaller hammer and I forge in the bevels. I do not go all the way down with the bevels, being San Mai. I've said it in other videos, I just got worried. I don't want to get it off center and mess up the whole project. So I just basically put a small bevel on each side, enough to curl the tip to get it going the right direction. After I get the bevels done in, I take it over to the vise and I put a twist in it. I couldn't find my big pipe wrench that I usually do for twisting, and I found these long, pliers, and they were not ideal for this. They slipped a little bit, chewed up some of the steel, but I ended up getting it all the way around. It took me a couple of heats, and then it was just a matter of straightening it once I did that. Next comes the rough grind, getting the bevels all the way out, and then some heat treating. All right, so it's on to the 2x72. Once I get here, I do the final shaping, and I used flat platen for most of it. Used the wheel at the bottom to do a little bit of the contouring from the handle to the blade, and then the rest of it is just rough grinding these bevels. The biggest key point is I have to make sure that I get them even on both sides. If you remove too much steel from one side or not as much steel on the other, it can cause warping whenever you heat treat it. As far as the heat treat goes, I did this just like I would any other knife. I went through a thermal cycle of heating it up to around that 1500 degrees, 1600 degrees, and then letting it cool to room temp and doing that 3 times. Then I heat it up to critical temps again, and I quench it. After I quench it, I will put it in the toaster oven at 400 degrees for 2 hours. Upon getting it out of the temper, now I go back to the 2x72 and I do my finish grinding. On this one, I went from an 80 grit belt to a 120 and then a 220. I try to do my sharpening on the top of the 2x72 a little differently than what I normally do, just to get a little better edge and try to get down to that core. The core wasn't showing as much on one side, but it ended up turning out pretty good. I did my final work with the conditioning belt, and then I went on to the sharpener. I used a workshop for my sharpening, and I went through their progression of belts, ended with a little leather belt that I bought, and dude, turned out really good. I was very happy with this. I'm gonna go ahead and let you watch this for a little bit, but I do appreciate you guys watching, and if you care to and you like watching these things, go like and subscribe. I'd like to get my subscriber count up. I enjoy doing these videos, but I'd sure like to reach some goals with it as well. But I appreciate it, and the finished product is right around the corner on this video, so thanks a lot. All right, got this about as far as I'm going to take it. Being a railroad spike knife, I'm not going to do any hand sanding. I did it on the conditioning belt. There are some scratches left on it, but again, for what it is, it's all right. The twist on the handle turned out really good. I didn't do much on it. I wanted to leave that darker, rougher look. I did take it to the conditioning belt a little bit just to soften the edges. Here, the blade itself, I don't know how well the camera is going to pick up on it, but you can see the darker edge. That is the core, and I've got good coverage all the way down on it. I must have gotten it a little bit off centered, because this side, while it does have a good core showing, it's not near as much, and you see it runs down the edge really good, and then I lose a little bit at the tip. But it is enough that it would hold an edge, and it's going to cut some stuff, and it's going to be a good knife if somebody chooses to have it. But anyways, this is where it is, and it is sharp. I didn't spend a lot of time sharpening it, but I mean, I guess paper is the deciding factor of how sharp a knife is, but it was pretty good. Railroad spike knife with 1075 core. Sucker should stay sharp forever, and hopefully do somebody good. Should we see you? Oh yeah, that's even going the wrong way. Shave my arm. So you need a camp knife? There you go. All right, appreciate you guys watching. This is going to be all the shots that I'm going to take of it, and get this sucker published.